Hello and welcome to the Luv Doc podcast with hosts Waldo Wachewski and Ophelia Bruschi.
You know, it is funny how our brains act like highly sophisticated photo editors when we look back at the past.
Oh, completely.
Right. Like you don't just remember a moment. You throw a soft focus filter on it.
You turn up the warmth a little bit.
Exactly. You crop out the messy background and suddenly a completely average Tuesday from, 3 years ago looks like an award-winning cinematic masterpiece.
Yeah, I mean, we curate our own history, essentially.
Yeah.
And the real danger creeps in when we start comparing that highly edited, heavily filtered past to the messy, unfiltered reality of our present. It's the ultimate cognitive trap.
It really is.
We end up measuring the physical lives we're actually living against a fictional standard that never even existed.
Which brings us to a perfect case study for this exact phenomenon. The Luv Doc published a piece titled A Humble Offering.
Right, the Paul letter.
Yes, a guy named Paul wrote in with a dilemma that beautifully and, painfully illustrates this trap.
It really does.
So, whether you are happily partnered, navigating the dating scene, or just fascinated by how the human brain loves to romanticize the past, this Luv Doc is going to explore exactly why our imaginations are often our own worst enemies when it comes to love.
The stakes here are just universally relatable, I think, because it gets to the core of the stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
The Luv Doc uses Paul's letter to demonstrate how those internal narratives can quietly sabotage our actual happiness if we aren't paying close attention to the editing process you just mentioned.
Right. So to understand the Luv Doc's incredibly sharp advice, we first have to understand the rather unusual way Paul frames his own life story.
Very unusual.
Yeah. Paul writes in saying he has worked for about 4 years at a, quote, company no one will care about.
See, that is a very telling detail right out of the gate.
It is.
Oh, definitely. Before he even gets to the romantic dilemma, he is minimizing his own reality. Like he is actively devaluing his daily lived experience.
Wow, yeah, I didn't even think about that. So 2 years into this job, Paul develops a massive crush on a coworker. We will call her coworker number 1.
Okay.
But out of what Paul himself calls cowardice, he never says a single word to her about it.
Not a word.
Not a single word. He just quietly pines for her from afar. Then, about 2 years ago, she moves out of state.
Ah, the classic unrequited love scenario.
Yep.
The feelings were entirely internal, completely untested by reality, and critically entirely uncommunicated.
But there is a massive plot twist here.
There always is.
A few months before coworker number 1 left the state, coworker number 2 asks Paul out.
Right.
And Paul tells the Luv Doc that they went on a few dates and now they have been in a healthy relationship of over a year.
Notice the jarring jump in that timeline, though.
Oh, yeah.
He skips over an enormous amount of relational development in literally a single sentence.
We will definitely unpack that bizarre timeline jump in a minute. But the core conflict Paul brings to the Luv Doc is this. He admits that occasionally he thinks about that first unrequited crush, and when he does, all those old emotions come rushing back.
Mm-hmm.
He says it feels like getting hit by a, quote, pile of bricks.
A pile of bricks.
Yeah, and now he is paralyzed with guilt. He is asking the doc if he is a bad person and if the right thing to do is to confess all of this internal turmoil to his current girlfriend.
Because he is physically present in one relationship, but psychologically he feels like he is actively betraying his partner with the ghost of another woman.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the way Paul is framing his emotional state is incredibly skewed.
Totally.
Think of it like this. Paul is comparing a movie that he is actually starring in,
Meaning his current relationship.
right, his current relationship, with all its normal pacing, mundane scenes, and real dialogue. He is comparing that to an unreleased movie trailer that he directed entirely in his own head.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, and that movie trailer only has the best lighting, the swelling music, the dramatic tension. Of course, that trailer is going to hit you like a pile of bricks.
Because he designed it that way.
Exactly. It was engineered by his own imagination to do exactly that. But you can't compare a 2-minute fantasy trailer to a 2-hour real-life documentary.
What's fascinating here is the psychological mechanism behind that pile of bricks feeling.
What do you mean?
Well, in psychology, there's a concept called the Zeigarnik effect.
The Zeigarnik effect.
Yeah, which essentially dictates that people remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks much better than completed tasks.
Oh, wow.
And an uncommunicated crush is the ultimate interrupted task. Because Paul never took the risk of asking coworker number 1 out, Those feelings never had to face the friction of reality.
Right. They were just safe.
Exactly. They didn't naturally dissipate over time because they were never exposed to the oxygen of the real world. Instead, they fossilized.
So they harden into these perfect, idealized fantasies.
Precisely. Like if he had asked her out, he might have experienced the awkwardness of a bad date, or a disagreement over where to eat, or maybe discovered she had a profoundly annoying habit.
Chewing loudly or something.
Right. But without that friction, the emotion just stayed perfectly intact, growing heavier and heavier in his mind until it became a literal brick wall.
Let me push back on Paul's guilt for a second, though.
Sure.
If this is just a fantasy, an open psychological loop, why is he feeling so agonizingly guilty? Why is he contemplating blowing up his current relationship just to confess a thought experiment to his girlfriend?
Well, it's because the human brain struggles to differentiate between a deeply felt emotional fantasy and a physical reality.
Really?
Yeah, the guilt he feels is real because the emotions he is generating in that internal movie trailer are real to his nervous system.
Wow. Given that agonizing emotional confession, you would think the Luv Doc would jump straight into validating Paul's broken heart or, addressing the guilt.
You would think so, yeah.
But the doc doesn't do that at all. While Paul is entirely focused on this emotional pile of bricks, the Luv Doc entirely bypasses the romance.
He completely ignores it.
He ignores the aching heart and zeroes right in on a glaring, almost absurd logical flaw in Paul's timeline.
It is a brilliant therapeutic pivot.
It really is.
The Luv Doc recognizes that before he can address Paul's complex feelings, he has to address Paul's incredibly weak grasp on objective reality.
The doc goes right after Paul's phrasing. Paul wrote that he went on a few dates and now somehow they are in a relationship of over a year.
That joke.
Yeah, the doc just refuses to accept this framing. He writes, "For the sake of maintaining my loose grasp on reality, I am going to assume you didn't just go on 2 dates and then, poof, you were in a long-term relationship. Right. You have a job, so there's no way you're in 3rd grade.
The underlying point there is that adult relationships require a vast, complex architecture of intermediate steps.
Yeah, they take work.
Exactly. They don't just teleport from casual drinks on date number 2 to navigating a committed relationship in year number 2. By pointing out the absurdity of 3rd grade dating rules, the doc is trying to wake Paul up.
And the doc actually goes on to invent this incredibly detailed, hilarious backstory of what must have happened to fill that massive gap in Paul's story.
Oh, this part is so funny.
It is. He tells Paul, "I choose to believe you went on at least a baker's dozen dates, each one successively more enthralling than the previous." He jokes that they must have experimented with sexual positions that would make a porn star blush, and then they had to sit down and reach a mature compromise so they wouldn't be even more annoying to their coworkers than they already were.
I mean, it is deeply hyperbolic, but the strategy is lethal.
How so?
He is forcing Paul to acknowledge the massive amount of shared history, vulnerable negotiation, and physical intimacy that actually took place between those few dates and the 1-year mark.
Right.
He is making Paul look at the work he actually put into his real life.
The doc even mocks up the office gossip to prove how ridiculous Paul sounds. He writes, "Did you hear about Phil from accounting? Went on 2 dates and then bam, he was tied down for over a year."
Phil from accounting.
Right. I want you, listening right now, to picture the most annoying couple in your own office and imagine them explaining their relationship this way. It highlights the absurdity of Paul's narrative by placing it on someone else.
Hearing it about a fictional Phil from accounting completely strips away Paul's emotional defenses. It forces him to see the objective ridiculousness of his own claim.
But, reading this for the first time, part of me wondered, is the doc just being a jerk here?
It can definitely read that way initially.
Why fixate on this absolute minutia? I mean, the doc even goes on a tangent quoting how modern politicians and pundits opine about getting fire-hosed with a torrent of outrageous lies and misinformation.
Yes, he does.
But why bring up the era of political misinformation instead of just answering the guy's question about love?
It seems overly aggressive at first glance, but connecting Paul's letter to the mechanics of modern misinformation is actually a highly deliberate tactic.
Okay.
By citing the concept of misinformation and firmly stating facts matter, the doc is highlighting how individuals build echo chambers in their own personal lives.
Oh, that makes sense.
Are you miffled that no one thought to buy you some flossy Luv Doc merch for your last birthday, anniversary, bat or bar mitzvah, graduation, baby or bridal shower? Your outrage is completely justified. Let it out and then get some revenge on your unthoughtful friends and loved ones by web surfing over to thepleasurecraft.com and buying all the dope merch your closets and storage spaces can hold. Remember, money is only temporary, but Luv Doc merch lasts easily a decade or so with proper care. At least that's what the merch company rep told us when he took us to that expensive strip club.
We usually think of misinformation as something that happens to us on the internet, not something we do to ourselves.
But we absolutely do it to ourselves. Think about it. Paul downplayed his job, calling it a company nobody cares about.
Right, and the doc jokingly suspects it is actually SpaceX to point out how much Paul minimizes things.
Exactly. And then Paul downplayed the origin of his relationship, turning a year of deep bonding into a casual few dates. The doc is using the misinformation analogy to show Paul that he is essentially running a propaganda campaign against his own real life. He is actively suppressing the facts of his own happiness to maintain the supremacy of his fantasy.
That is a crucial pivot. Because the doc has now successfully established that Paul is an unreliable narrator of his own factual timeline, he has total clearance to expose how unreliable Paul is about his own feelings.
Right.
If you can't trust your own memory of how your current relationship started, how can you trust your memory of a crush you never even dated?
And this brings us to the core contrast of the entire advice column.
The two women.
Yes. The comparison between the physical, breathing reality of coworker number 2 and the ghostly, untouchable perfection of coworker number 1.
The doc paints this picture so vividly. He describes coworker number 2 as being in the trenches with Paul.
The trenches.
They are in it, domestically and professionally. The doc says she is showing her complete ass, as it were, day in and day out. Paul has taken a really long test drive and knows exactly what he is getting. There are no illusions left.
In the trenches is such a beautiful metaphor for a long-term relationship.
It really is.
It implies dirt and fatigue and daily routine, but it also implies deep camaraderie and shared survival.
Yeah, you're in it together.
It is fundamentally unglamorous, but it is deeply real. It is the friction we were talking about earlier.
And then you have the flawless phantom, coworker number 1. The doc points out that she exists entirely in Paul's imagination at this point.
Entirely.
She didn't take his feelings with her when she moved, and because she is just a figment of his imagination, she can be anything. The doc uses absolute hyperbole here, betting that she is skilled at all 64 positions of the Kama Sutra,
Right.
and that she probably doesn't even have bad breath when she wakes up in the morning.
Which forces Paul to confront the ridiculous standard he is using. He is holding his real girlfriend, who wakes up with normal human bad breath, against a ghost who is magically minty fresh at 7 a.m.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the psychology of this is everywhere. It is like Paul is standing in his kitchen holding a real, maybe slightly burnt piece of toast.
Okay, burnt toast.
It is not the most exciting breakfast. The jam is spread a little unevenly, but it provides actual nourishment. Your body metabolizes it. It keeps you alive.
Right.
And instead of eating it, Paul is staring at a high-definition hologram of a 5-star Michelin-rated meal.
Oh, that's good.
The hologram looks absolutely perfect, but you can't eat a hologram. If you spend your life trying to consume a hologram, you will starve to death while holding actual sustenance in your hand.
The hologram provides psychological safety because it requires zero vulnerability, but as you said, it provides zero actual nourishment.
Yeah.
The Luv Doc connects this dynamic beautifully to a very old concept. The subhead of the column is literally the classic 2 in the bush scenario.
Ah, a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush.
Exactly. The idiom is fundamentally about risk and value. The bird in your hand is a certainty. The 2 in the bush are a possibility. They represent double the reward, but they are elusive, uncaptured.
And Paul is falling into a massive psychological trap here.
Huge trap. He is aggressively undervaluing the bird in his hand, this healthy, real, supportive relationship, because his imagination has infinitely inflated the value of the 2 in the bush.
Yeah.
He's convinced himself that the phantom in the bush isn't just 2 birds. It's a flock of golden, perfect, magical birds.
Because the fantasy never has to prove itself. It never has to pay a mortgage or argue about whose turn it is to do the dishes or come home exhausted after a terrible day at work.
Never.
Have you ever caught yourself doing this? Mentally comparing a real-world annoyance like your partner forgetting to take out the trash or a friend canceling plans to a fictional ideal of someone who always does everything perfectly.
We all do it.
It is a deeply unfair comparison.
The phantom is flawless, specifically because it is frictionless. But human connection is defined by its friction.
Right.
The process of 2 people rubbing against each other's flaws over time is what creates genuine intimacy. Paul is mistaking the lack of friction in his fantasy for true love.
So recognizing that Paul is completely trapped in this mental loop, comparing his beautifully flawed reality to a flawless fiction, the doc finally decides to deliver an ultimatum to snap him out of it. And this is where the advice gets incredibly practical, but also intensely extreme.
The doc forces Paul to look at the logistical cost of his daydream.
He lays out this extreme option. He tells Paul, look, if this fantasy is truly twisting you up, if it is genuinely ruining your ability to be present and engaged with your current girlfriend, then yes, you have to tell her. You have to blow your entire life up, go to the airport, catch the next flight to Iowa or Alabama or wherever this phantom woman lives now, track her down, and profess your undying love.
It is a breathtaking escalation of the stakes.
It really made me wonder, so I want to pose this to you and to you listening. Do we think the dog actually wants Paul to buy a plane ticket? Is this literal advice, or is this a rhetorical mirror being held up to show Paul how absurd his fantasy actually is?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it operates entirely as a rhetorical mirror.
Okay.
The doc is calling Paul's bluff. Up until this point, Paul's fantasy has been a safe, internal movie trailer. It requires no action.
Right.
It just allows him to feel a bittersweet nostalgia without any actual consequences.
It is a victimless crime in his own head, or so he thinks.
But by presenting the actual terrifying logistical reality of chasing the phantom, the doc changes the game.
Yeah, he does.
Think about what that entails. Sitting your girlfriend down, breaking her heart, packing bags, buying an expensive plane ticket, flying across the country, renting a car, and showing up on the doorstep of a woman who probably barely remembers you from 2 years ago.
Wow.
The doc makes the fantasy suddenly look exhausting. He injects the heavy friction of reality into the frictionless dream.
He forces the hologram to have a logistical cost. Suddenly, flying to Alabama to confess to a former coworker sounds incredibly messy and, frankly, a little unhinged.
It completely strips away the romantic soft focus filter we talked about at the beginning, replacing it with the stark, awkward reality of human behavior.
Which clears the path for the doc's final, actual, grounded advice. He tells Paul that before he buys that ticket, he needs to do one profound thing.
This is the key.
Paul must evaluate his current relationship based on what he has gained, rather than measuring it against the fictional relationship he thinks he gave up.
That is the crux of this entire Luv Doc. It is the ultimate takeaway.
Yeah.
Human beings are inherently wired to mourn closed doors. We hate the idea of missed opportunities, and we have a terrible habit of assuming that the path we didn't take was paved with gold.
We really do.
But true maturity, like real emotional intelligence, is learning to evaluate our lives by the rooms we actually chose to walk into.
We have to measure our wealth by what we have gained in the trenches. Paul gained a partner who is navigating life with him. He gained shared history.
Shared history, exactly.
He gained someone who compromised with him so they wouldn't be annoying at work. Measuring that tangible wealth against a ghost is a guaranteed recipe for misery.
It requires immense vigilance. You've had to actively guard against your own mind's tendency to run a propaganda campaign against your own happiness.
So, to summarize this whole journey, we started with Paul, a guy paralyzed by an uncommunicated crush and a totally skewed timeline of his own life. We walked through the Luv Doc's hilarious Phil from Accounting Reality Check, where he proved that facts actually matter when it comes to our personal histories.
They absolutely do.
We explored the danger of starving while staring at a hologram. And we arrived at the profound realization that we simply cannot let a flawless fiction ruin a messy, beautiful reality.
We have to choose the burnt toast. We have to choose the friction.
So, what does this all mean for you, the listener? I want you to genuinely ask yourself, where in your own life might you be pulling a Paul?
That's a hard question.
It is. Where are you comparing your own in the trenches reality, whether that is your relationship, your career, your friendships, or just your daily routine, to a perfect imaginary alternative?
Yeah.
Where are you starving yourself while holding on to a piece of toast just because you're staring at a high-definition hologram? I challenge you to look around at the messy, unfiltered reality you are standing in right now and measure it by what you have actually gained.
And as you think about that, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over.
Okay.
Consider this. What if the pile of bricks that Paul feels hitting him every time he thinks of that first crush isn't actually love for his former coworker at all?
What else would it be?
What if it's just his own mind mourning the loss of a perfect fictional world where he never had to do the hard, unglamorous work of an actual relationship?
Oh, wow. That changes the entire definition of heartbreak. Thank you for joining us on this Love Doc podcast. Keep questioning the stories you tell yourself, and we will see you next time.
To read the column that spawned this podcast, go to austinchronicle.com/columns/the Love Doc. There are probably worse things to do with your time, right?